Good morning, Wednesday, June 14th. Try to make this as quick as possible to lay a little more explanation regarding what I'm trying to accomplish here. As I'm listening to a Randy Green video, I started to create questions in my mind of things I'd like to ask her to better clarify, and as I look at that from the opposite angle, I realize there could equally be similar questions someone would want to ask me to help clarify what's going on here. So let's backtrack a minute. I talked about it in the video on the container regarding the information we've been given and what we think we're working with, and that in fact I believe the truth exists outside of that container. I talked in another video kind of long-windedly on how I see the two primary vectors of discovery, one being starting with our current events, which would also be called our recent history, the history you're alive for, that you know personally, and going back through time, and using the appropriate scholars that do the real research, and they're starting with the foundation that we share here in the now, and slowly inching their way backwards, working through the distortions, finding old texts, etc. So from here back, and then the other vector kind of working from top down, being any of these folks in the cosmic disclosure. And although those vectors to me feel very different in their appearance, kind of how I visualize them internally, for sake of representation, I just think of it as one from here back and the other from top down. And hopefully the more intersection you get, the more focal points of truth you can validate. Alright, so all that to be said, there is a third vector which is in fact the most important, and if you've listened to any of my other videos, you can probably imagine what that one might be, and that would be your own internal knowing. We could call this the vector of self, the internal truth, etc. The problem, of course, is most people don't have this information. They get it by learning, and then we run into the other two vectors, either by studying the appropriate scholars of our time and throughout history, or finding the people that are somehow tapped in on the cosmic side. And you can train yourself to become one of the scholars by going through the works of other people, making your own discoveries, etc. But ideally, what we want to do, and what this, I wouldn't say what the whole goal, but one of the huge goals of working with, whether you want to call it magic, specifically the white magic, which would distinguish itself from black magic in regards to focusing on the will, the higher will with a capital W, as Passio likes to put it, which means not the will of the self, but the will of the greater good, so to speak. So whether you're working with magic, alchemy, the clearing of the template, as Randy would talk about it, Howard, Dr. Jerry refers to it, and all these other cosmic teachers, ultimately it comes back to the know thyself, so that you can, how do we put this, shed off the dross of the layers of the base program of the matrix, so that you can, and literally this is what we're looking to do, tap into the other dimensions or densities, the other realities that are invisible to us here in the third dimension, so that you can personally access the information of the cosmic records. And this is beyond just the Akashic. Let's assume if we know of a term that it's still within our intentionally created container. So let's assume that the cosmic record it includes but is greater than any of the terms we already know, like the Akashic record. So honing the primary vector, which sounds pretty silly, could also be understood as what all those secret societies were attempting to accomplish, or related to the secrets that they were keeping, is what that process is, what that real alchemical process is, in order to activate, whether it's locked DNA, whether it's the template, which is the word Randy uses, which refers to either our soul or spirit, whatever word that is, whatever you want to picture it as, that is ultimately the goal. Because once you can tap into your own inner knowing and the information that surrounds us, talk about having access to some truth. I mean, it's one thing to be able to have discernment on the bullshit that comes over on the news wire and be able to see through the lies of what they're trying to propagate and spread. But it's a whole nother when you can access the history of creation itself. And that, my friends, would be one of those locked doors that religion said you cannot access without an intermediary, aka a priest or an imam or a rabbi or whatever. In other words, to use the parlance of the religiously inclined, that would be to know God itself. Okay? And as it turns out, God is within. So you need to know yourself. And how do we do that? Well, that's what I'm on a mission for. That's what following the work of Boza, and by the way, Jerry may have gone off the deep end a little, so we'll have to revisit him. That is my current interest in the works of Randy Green, is following some of her protocols, practices, etc., to clean the distortions and get back in touch with my inner personal template, which connects me to my eternal self, which is connected to what we would call the source of creation, which I call Trog. Come to know truth, set myself free to set everyone else free, or to help them help themselves set themselves free within this frequency field matrix based program. So it's a big deal. I mean, when you lay it out like that, the equivalent for anyone religiously inclined is taking the necessary steps to get into heaven, except that's a distorted description of something that can only be achieved in the afterlife. But I'm working to cleanse my distortions here and now to become aware of myself in all levels of carnation, whether it's the physical vessel or the eternally spiritual vessel, etc. All right. Hope that made sense.